this regularly for the shul. So I've had, numerous opportunities, and yet something new always comes up. And this was relatively new, that my approach this year. And I want to say I'm putting on a shawl that I bought during our mission visit to Israel, and I ascertained that it observes Shatnez, so I think it was totally okay to make a tallis out of it, but I never have, and I'm resolving that I will wear my shawl of many colors, and it will become a talit this week, because in honor of doing, the laning the parsha this week, I'll come up to the Torah on, this Saturday. So this is exciting. A new talis. It doesn't have its fringes yet, but it will. So I want to forgive me. My throat's a bit rough because I had this cold, and I will try to talk through it. The kulchem that I wrote, I can just read from it, but I'd like to turn it into more of a discussion than just a rendition, because you will be able to read the kulchem. But I selected 3 verses that I proposed to Lane, and they were as follows. Chapter 37, 9, 10, and 11. Joseph's brothers detested him, quote, but his father kept the matter in mind. That's the quotation. And I suggest the kavana for that is to ask ourselves, and he's asking, or the parsha is asking, are we meant to rule over each other, in quotes, or mindfully cooperate? And it's a challenge to people who are, remember, forming themselves in a community, just beginning to form. And the indication for me is to ask, how autocratic or how structured should the rule of law be? Were we really meant to rule? And if we rule, or if, in other words, is Joseph being detested because he's attempting to assert some type of influence, if not actual control, over his brothers? So the question for this aliyah is, if Jacob must think carefully to determine how to react to this fraternal conflict, then this aliyah is about searching for ways to resolve conflict and foment peace. So that's my germ from that moment. And the next moment I move to is 37, 12, 13, and 14. And this is when Jacob sends Joseph on a mission. Quote, go see how your brothers are and bring me back word, end quote. And in this phrase, I'd say we're looking at being told that we need to seek each other out and to care for one another. This is one of the earliest places where we see that we're told to actually care and not just think, but as not just be mindful, but actually take care of each other. And I feel like the kavana here is also about how to not just show compassion and create lines of communication, but actually find ways to share the load in family and community. So the third marching order, if you will, that I found is in verses 15, 16, and 17. And the quote there is, a man, or shall we ask, is it an angel, comes to Joseph when he's wandering. Perhaps he's lost in the countryside. Perhaps he's wandering, seeking. Perhaps he's looking, for an answer for his own soul. And he asks for and receives guidance in this moment. And the angel comes and gives him guidance. So the kavana here, I feel, is when we're lost and wondering how to resolve a problem, when we're alone and we're trying to deal with something on our own, and we encounter help. How do we discover how to ask for that help? How do we discover how to truly seek the help? In other words, sometimes help presents itself, but do we always know, or can we come to know how to be ready to accept that help, how to be ready to ask for what we need? So those are the kavanot that I felt for this section, and I wondered if, shall we say, in my case, Joseph becomes a figure, kind of a patron saint, if you will. I keep searching for a better expression because that's very Catholic, but we find our patriarchs and matriarchs as kind of soulmates sometimes, and I feel that he is my soulmate, and I've taken that on. So I'm suggesting that one of the challenges in this parsha is about how we make our family palatable for ourselves. How do we be with a family, whether it's our community that we've selected and chosen, or whether it's our actual birth family? How do we relate to them? How do we learn how to relate to them mindfully and successfully? How do we communicate? Does anybody have any reactions to what I've said so far?
Well, I think what we've seen in Joseph's life, of course, and that mirrors my own, is how those relationships change over time.
Yeah.
And in the best of situations, they change for the better. That if we perpetuate certain patterns of relating from childhood into adulthood, then we have more problems. But it's hard. And personally, I couldn't pinpoint certain places where, particularly, let's say when my husband came into the family, and I saw how my husband related to my siblings, and I went, "Oh," and that was really instructive because he saw them as adults, and he didn't have a
Right.
history with them, and I learned a lot about how to relate to my siblings by watching my husband relate to them.
Gosh, I relate to that very well. And just briefly, I'll say a little anecdote that when I became affianced, engaged at the age of 19, and about a number of months before that, when I brought my husband to meet my family, he coined a phrase for my father that has stuck that ever since. And mind you, this is more than 50 years ago, and it still lives with us. He called him Awesome Al. My dad's name was Alfred, and he became Awesome Al. And he was frightening. And it could be anyway. And I've written about that. I've written a number of things about that. And it took me a lifetime, really, it took me many years to get to the point where I could think about my father without fear. And I'll put that in. I want to dominate the conversation. I want to, encourage responses to this. But I think this passage is rendering some of the difficulty of being a child to a parent and hearing that what that parent has to say, whether the parent is a figure, in other words, God, or whether, because so we can take it to the larger, more global concept, or whether even we're just being helped here with the concepts of how you relate to a family and to a community. That's big enough without even having to figure out how to relate to God. But what do you do when you're feeling commanded and it's fearsome, and someone comes to you and says, "This is where you need to go"? I think that's one of the things that's being said. Roberta, what do you have to say?
Yeah, thanks, Joan. Thanks for that question. When do we ask for help within our families? And I was thinking that the parsha starts with, and the name of the parsha is that Jacob settled. And so what a contrast between Jacob settling. So Jacob doesn't do anything to, it seems like, to address this incredible disaster that his family has become. In fact, he sends the youngest, or the second youngest, to go and do something, So Joseph settles. Jacob settles. Joseph is a doer, and just the whole story of Joseph is also just maybe reminding us that when you rock the boat, when you shake the boat, even in your own family, you're going to get some flack. I think flack actually might be a sailing term also. I'm not sure. But anyway, just taking that in, that connection between what you pointed out and Joseph's role in the family, which is absolutely to shake things up, and Jacob's inability to see, like his father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that.
And we do that as parents. I want to have compassion for us who are parents. But,
Yeah.
you try to just keep creating harmony without really looking at the deeper dynamics and seeing what needs to be done.
Well, I'm wondering if we can find some more guidance in here because, right now, there are no accidents, right? I'm dealing with particularly a communication issue between my children and myself. And as a parent, how do you move closer to your adult children when they resist it, when they put limits? How do you deal with those limits? So does anyone see anything in the Parsha as well that might cue us somehow? Because, Joseph is coming to adulthood, depending on what age you think he is in this Parsha. I think it's actually about coming to adulthood and having to individuate. Later in the Joseph story, he's going to be ejected. He's going to, have to step out into a completely foreign country, and he comes of age in that place, maybe because he can't be seen by his family as an adult until he does that. And maybe the revelation later on when he says, don't you know me? I'm Joseph. And it always moves me emotionally. It's about getting recognition. It's about having his adult family see him as a leader and as a fully fledged individual, and not just an obnoxious person who indeed is actually a little different. In some cases, they feel that perhaps Joseph was sexually different, but we know at least that he was flamboyant and colorful, and not like the very staid and straight-laced family that had come about. And he doesn't have to take on the role that Reuben does, to be the leader and be stern and be structured. He can kind of step out a little, and maybe by virtue of stepping out a little bit, he learns something and teaches something. He creates a new paradigm for the Jewish people, that it's okay to go step into foreign territory. It's okay to take on other aspects, or even virtually other clothing, to expand the consciousness of the Jewish people. I want to open that again to see, is there any further comment about that? Because we're looking at sort of an arc, a familial arc of development in the Jewish people here. I think it's really signaling, and in particular in that last case where a man comes to Joseph, is it actually his own adult consciousness that's coming to him and saying, time to grow up. What else might you think about that? Anyone else? Roberta, again.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just what you said, Joan, about creating your own identity within your family, which I think has a lot to do with why our kids want space from us, by the way, right?
Right.
But that's exactly what Tamar does. And Tamar is a big piece of this week's Parsha, right? I think I'm remembering. Yeah. So
Tamar,
so she completely steps out of the role as, shunned widow daughter-in-law who's supposed to go live in some special house for, women who will be isolated and cast out for the rest of their lives. And she completely, she models the taking on a new identity that is such a shift from the way it's been done in that family before. So yeah, I think you're really onto something here.
Tamar is she's a second paradigm for someone who has to take action feelingly as and she's our feminist issue, is she not? Our image. She's our model for a female, one of the first in the books of Moses, who has a voice and has action. She has got agency. And it's odd, isn't it, though, that she, again, is a foreigner. We're looking at Joseph having to go to a foreign land to find himself or to be recognized, and Tamar, who is, from a foreign land. Of course, with the early ancestors, they're all foreign, they're creating a people, but I think it's emblematic that she, as a female and not birthed of the clan, is the one who's instructive here and the one who's guiding us about agency in the name of God. Anyone else have some comments on that? And thank you for bringing that. That's a great adjunct to the phrases that I selected for discussion.
Yeah, what Tamar does is help Judah grow up also, as the fourth son, and the only one conceived by Leah when Jacob cared for her at that moment, and that's why his name means thank you. Comes from the same root as Todah, and he is also separate from the rest of the family, and recognizes that Tamar is more righteous than he at the moment of that he was indeed the father of what came to be her sons. Yet another place where the foreign-born woman is the progenitor of the line that leads to David, leads to Boaz, which leads to David. But it's that experience that lets Judah later on understand both Joseph and his brother, not even both, the three things. He understands Joseph, he understands his brothers, and most especially he understands his father's loss, which when all the brothers were younger men, they hadn't lived long enough and experienced life enough to understand their father's grief over Joseph and his fear for Benjamin. So it's Tamar that is the crucial teacher of Yehuda.
And again, Judah learns from this female and takes on, his cloak, and then becomes the agent again of survival when he takes the action in front of Joseph and saves Benjamin. So obviously he's one of the ones who stands for conscience when it comes to whether they threw Joseph in a pit and let him die or whether they allowed him to survive. And so he's very much an agent, and I like the connection between Tamar's agency and Judah's. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. He becomes the brother who sees more, understands more, and that's why we descend from him.
And that's why Yehudim, we're Yehudim.
Yeah.
Which brings
some of you are Yehudim. Others are Leviim.
What's that?
No, we're all Yehudim.
Just kidding.
So I wanted to bring full circle then to the other aspect of this week, which is that we commence the celebration of Hanukkah. And Judah, if he's hoda, if he's really thankful and grateful, he's rejoicing. And I think that there are very few accidents, if any, in the way that our calendar unfolds, the rabbinical wisdom of and how it and it's an amazing, exciting thing to me how numerically things worked out the way they did. But as we're coming to the turn of light, we're going to the darkest days, and we're celebrating Hanukkah now so as to increase our light and keep ourselves lit, literally, physically and emotionally and spiritually during the darkest period of the year. We're celebrating that here with the joyousness of hoda, of gratitude, when Judah starts to celebrate his manhood and starts to take on his role. So I want to say that I wish us all success and strength in bringing about the light, in increasing light, in lighting our candle, so to speak, and bringing light and wisdom to the conflicts that currently plague our world. Very much on my mind, I'm sure on everyone's mind. So I'd like to kind of end with a bracha, and I haven't even premeditated this, but I'd like us all to join by, invoking and bless us with the light of wisdom and the light of our Torah and the light of knowledge deep in ourselves, of family and of community, and ways to communicate and make that brotherhood whole again. My whole writing career, my whole spiritual career started out and has continued to be about, resolving conflict and joining the cousins, Islam and Judaism, the Arabs and the Jews, the secular and the religious, and having some kind of rejoicing of the light together, that we should share it. And I hope for Israel that it comes about soon.
Can you hear us on? Amen.